Going live, going live. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us on iTunes right now, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. And guess what? I'm going to read one. I'm going to read a review because that's what I do. I read the reviews that are 5 stars. This is a glowing review. Like, I swear I didn't write this myself. Thank you so much from Mel Coons. Subject of the review is Rogan. Better than Joe Rogan's pod. Appears to be more honest. This is high praise. High praise from Mel Coons. Thank you so much for the review. I don't even know what to say. I think not having money helps. I have no one's bought me. Although I do have a little sponsor, and I want to shout out that little sponsor right now. Cushy Dreams. This podcast would not be possible without Cushy Dreams. I know that they have helped me so much with my anxiety over the last year and a half or so. Cushy Dreams specializes in high quality smokable CBD bud in tins and pre-rolls. I personally really love the pre-rolls. They come in these adorable little 5-packs, very portable. Open it up. Smells, looks, feels just like high quality marijuana, but it's not going to get you high. There's like 0.3% THC, so you can enjoy all the health benefits of CBD without getting high. Join the men and women who are sick of vapes and gummies and want to smoke their CBD. I just like the experience of it, and I feel within like 5-10 minutes my mind and body are way more calmed down. They have different indica sativa blends like hustle, relax, create, energy, dream, peace. So whatever you want to do, if you want to be a little more relaxed before bed, maybe do a little dream, a little piece. You see what I'm getting at here. They do tons of lab tests to ensure compliance and purity. All this information can be found on their website, cushydreams.com. That's KUSHY dreams.com. At checkout, use promo code CMP to get 20% off and free shipping. Love it. Love those guys. I'm going to be doing stand-up in a city near you. I am so excited. This Saturday, I will be opening for the Doug Stanhope at the Foxwoods in Connecticut. Really, really excited. I love Doug. He did an episode months and months ago. I think actually last year he may have done an episode of this podcast. And I think he said he did it out of spite, but it ended up being like one of the best episodes. So anyway, I'm really excited to open for him this Saturday. Then I'll be heading to Vegas next week, next Friday and Saturday, September 10th and 11th. I will be joining the comedians of the Compound in Vegas. We'll be performing at the Comedy Works in the Plaza Hotel. And then the weekend after that, September 17th and 18th, I'll be in Texas headlining Hyenas in Dallas, doing 4 shows out there. I believe on the 17th, there is a 8:30 and 10:30 show. And then on Saturday, the 18th, 7 and 9:30 shows. And then I'll be doing all my usual appearances at the Blaze the week leading up to that. So I always love going down to Texas. Always love hanging with my Texas peeps. Good times, good times. All right. Speaking of good times, I'm really excited to have this guy on the podcast today. I interviewed, I don't know if we'd call him a partner, a content collaborator, Robert Barnes, a couple weeks back, which was a hit. Such a success. So I'm so excited to have him on the program today. He is a Canadian. He's a lawyer. He's a YouTuber. He's attractive. I mean, he's the whole package. And I should have confirmed with him how to pronounce his last name. So here I am winging it. David Freiheit.
It is phonetically Freiheit perfect. In French, we just roll the R's. We go Freiheit. But
Freiheit. That sounds almost German.
It is well, it's Germanic. It depends. It is of Germanic descent. I'm of a Jewish Germanic descent, so it was Yiddish. With my grandfather had it, but it is verbatim in German freedom. And the thing is, it's an interesting lesson. Frei is free, and Heit is the state of. So Freiheit is the state of being free. Like Fahrenheit is the state of, and Fahren, from what I understand, is warmth or temperature. So Fahrenheit is the state of temperature. Freiheit is the state of being free.
You would make such a good teacher. I mean, you already are a teacher in a way, but you have like this way about you.
I can only
Like,
teach what I understand. That's actually the sort of the nexus, not the nexus, but rather the origins of the channel. I can only not even teach. I can only explain something if I understand it myself.
that definitely helps. Even just listening to you speak a teensy tiny bit of German. I'm half German. My dad is from Germany. Did he teach me or my brother and sister any German? No, of course not. I think he'll occasionally, like when we would encounter another German person, then it comes out. Like my whole childhood growing up, nothing, not a word. I think I know how to say like I love you, and that's it. But like if he meets a random guy on the street, he'll be like, he was pointing to my mom at one point. He'd be like, "This is mein Frau." Like he comes out of it out of nowhere with his German skills.
When I was studying philosophy and we were studying Heidegger, I decided I wanted to try to learn German, but learning a new language in your 20s is virtually impossible. So I know the Ich liebe dich, and then I know some German that I learned from that South Park movie, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to repeat that on the internet these days.
Oh,
said too much already.
Yeah, we love South Park. Well, we need South Park now more than ever, it seems. They just are going to have an endless supply of material. David, what I appreciate so much about what you do, I want to get into that, but I want to get into your background a little bit. Have you always wanted to study law? Have you always had an interest? Because a lot of times the things we major in are not the things that we pursue as adults.
Well, so I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and the family is a family of lawyers. My dad's a lawyer, and 4 of the 5 kids became lawyers, but there was no family pressure to become a lawyer. It's just, in certain family milieus, the expectation is you become a professional. So the only question is it going to be medicine or law? And for me, it was by the time I had gotten to university, I hadn't done enough of the sciences, so it was going to be law. When I was a kid, I was always told I was going to be a good lawyer because in elementary school, I liked arguing. I liked fighting with the teachers. I liked maybe being more mature than I should have been at the time, but I enjoyed arguing and I enjoyed debate. And so I was always told you're going to be a good lawyer. So maybe there was that social pressure, but no meaningful pressure that I ever felt. It was just, you become a lawyer, you become an accountant, you become a doctor, something along those lines. And so I did it. So
it's like you were raised in an Indian family. Your options were science or law.
It was, I mean, and by the time we got there, like I had the oldest brother did not become the lawyer. He's the only one. But there's 8.5 years between first and last in the family. And so by the time I got into SAGEP, 2 of them were already in law school. It was sort of the foregone conclusion. You study something, you do an undergrad, you go into law, you're set for life. And, then you get into law and you're like, yeah, this isn't exactly what it looked like in LA Law or on Suits. This is a lot more tedious, a lot more paper pushing, and a lot more spinning wheels just for the sake of spinning wheels and not feeling like you're making the slightest difference on the world around you. And that was
wow, which is most jobs.
That's where, like, I appreciate that. They're not everybody gets to love their job, and then a lot of people just don't like their jobs, and it becomes a means to an ends of sorts. But at some point, people have this existential crisis, or at least I did myself, which is you get one life on this earth to live. And what are you going to, you don't know if you're going to die at 50. You don't know if you're going to die at 103 like my grandmother. But what are you going to do with that time? And if it's going to be spent literally mulling over your existence every day you go into the office at 7 o'clock and you see the sunrise, you're like, geez, if I'm doing this in 10 years and then I die of a heart attack, I will be very, very angry. Of course, you don't know when you died, but you just know that moment before, this was not what I was put on this earth to do. And I mean, I'm lucky I branched out, but it was after quite a bit of risk and adventure.
In time, it's wacky. And I guess as you get older, like time moves so much faster. Like maybe in your 20s, you're like, oh, 10 years from now, that's so long from now. But
I've got a 12-year-old kid. It's crazy. I've got a 12-year-old kid, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. But like 12 years old, just went to high school. I mean, I still feel like a 16-year-old punk who's, I was watching the intro of the Cushy. I mean, not that type of 16-year-old punk, but there are certain things that bring back memories that are still fresh in my mind. I still feel like a 16-year-old, but I'm 42, gray-haired, and feel suffocated by the weight of the world. I mean, and that's what you become an adult, and then it goes quicker. The entire perspective of the universe changes, and you have to actually at some point stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the next generation. But we might be getting ahead of our discussion here.
Was there a moment? Was there a certain time or certain event that made you sort of change course from whatever job you had to being like, oh, I need to focus on, freedoms and helping the country, I guess?
Well, that was the later part. I was having a lot of fun just doing the YouTube stuff, but I guess the progression is this: studied law. I studied philosophy before law, which was fun. I did a year in Paris exchange and revamped my French. Came back, finished my philosophy degree. Then I studied law at a French university out in Quebec City.
Oh, are you fluent in French?
I consider myself fluent. I'm as fluent as you get when it's a second language. I mean, I practiced law in French day in and day out for 13 years.
Whoa.
And I studied in law. I wrote only one exam in English. The university I went to was French. I mean, 99% French. I wrote one exam in English and then never did it again because it was bad practice. And I think also I need to make sure the teachers understood what I was saying. So the French province, 85% French, practice is 50-50, but most judges are French. So I practice in French. I think I'm fluently bilingual. And so when I finished law school, got a job at a big firm. It was great. It was new. You're wearing a suit. You're going up into skyscrapers. You're having business lunches. You feel
croissants.
Oh no, yeah, you get catered Friday afternoon wine and cheese. I mean, it was the greatest thing in the world to be a part of something bigger than you. And then as far as I went, I never had a day that I loved more than the day before. And I never, the practice never turned into what I thought it was going to be, what I hoped it was going to be. And then 10 years later, I guess it's 7 years later, I have my first kid and I take some paternal time off. And I went back after a few months off. I spent another 6 months there and I said, geez, I can't do this. I mean, I can't, leave the house when the kid's asleep, come back when the kid's asleep, 7 to 7, 7 days a week. I mean, and then I said, okay, I have to quit. And my wife said, just quit. We'll figure it out. I quit. Within 2 weeks, started getting calls on my own to take files, smaller files. Ooh. When you have no overhead, $250 an hour you don't even know what to do with that. I mean, first of all, it's cheaper than any lawyer in the city. And when your overhead is, at the time, my basement, but then a $700 a month office,
you're almost like making like Uber for law. It sounds like
it is what I mean. It's a weird. It was the most affordable rate you get for at the time. It was maybe a 6-year lawyer. I had been, I don't say groomed has a bad connotation. I had been, what is the word when they train you? Whatever. I've been trained by the best law firm in Canada. I go to my own. I have all of the training, and now I can charge a stagiaire's fee, an intern's fee, and no overhead. And it was great. It was freedom. You get to do the files the way you like. You get to say no to the clients you want to say no to. You get to say no in files when you don't want to do something, when you think it's wrong. But even then, still, after 5 or 7 years of that, I just didn't like it. And I said, I've got to make a change so I can make a change. I had started this YouTube thing and it had nothing to do with law. And then I said, I'm going to just stop practicing law, wind it up. It took 1.5 years to wind up my litigation side, gave the files away, and then I went into marketing, tried the YouTube thing, tried daily vlogging for 2 years. And it was only after that when I started putting out periodic videos about what it's like to be a lawyer, because I had a few files left. People were like, that's awesome. That's interesting. Tell me more. What goes into preparing for a file, prepping a witness. Then I did the Alex Jones breakdown deposition. And I said, holy cows, this is my ikigai, the purpose in life, what I'm good at, what I like doing, what the world needs, and what I can make money doing, all overlapped. And that's when the channel sort of exploded. And I said, that's it. It'll be a law themed channel. I'll bring my energy, ADD, whatever you want to call it, and, break things down so that I can understand them and so the world can understand them. And then it just, nobody foresaw the pandemic coming and the absolute devastation of each and every fundamental civil right and liberty we ever had. And that's how I ended up now running for office for the people.
So wow, there's a lot here. So it sounds like your curiosity and covering Alex Jones put you on the map a little bit, blew you up a little bit. What was it about him that made you want to delve in? Because most people stay away from him. Most people are scared.
This is how I am. Naivety is a great thing sometimes because you don't even know that which you should be fearful of. And so you do things that you might not have otherwise done had you thought you should have been fearful of it. If I had known what I knew now, I might have said, yeah, I'll pick another deposition to break down. I didn't know anything about Alex Jones. I didn't know the baggage that went with Alex Jones. I vaguely knew, you know, some of his stuff that had been in the news. And I'm glad I didn't know it, because the right thing would have been to do the breakdown anyhow. But the cowardly thing to do might have been, I might have done it had I known better, is pick another subject. But I did it. I didn't pick it because Alex Jones was a notorious character. I really didn't know. I just did it because I read the headlines. They were all running that 5-second clip of Alex Jones saying, "I suffered from a form of psychosis." And I was like, well, that's interesting. It maybe makes him look weird, but it doesn't tell me what happened in that deposition. And I sat through the 3 hours, 17 minutes of that deposition. And I was like, holy cows, the media is not telling us a damn thing. They're not explaining anything. That deposition did not go badly for Alex Jones. As a lawyer, that's my opinion. People might disagree. That deposition went terribly for the attorney conducting it, who I don't know who he is. Then when I broke it down, it's like, then you realize people just need information. They need to understand. They don't need to be told what to think. They just need to be told the information so they can think on their own. And that was, I mean, really, that's where it started snowballing. And I'm glad it happened.
What was the deposition from? Like, what was
it? Was from the Sandy Hook defamation case. So you had this lawyer asking Alex Jones all these questions about things he had said in broadcasts where he had, you know, allegedly accused people of being crisis actors, allegedly accused, you know, made a lot of accusations, allegedly. Some of them were taken in context. A lot of them were not. And what this lawyer had done is spliced together in like a 10-minute video, a number of supercuts of like Alex Jones from different broadcasts, different dates, and had said, you know, this is from one broadcast, and it led to such confusion. But by having spliced together the videos, the lawyer effectively created one exhibit that was itself a montage of various exhibits, the context of which could not be established based on that exhibit. So it was a big mess. It was like 101. Stagiaires would learn very quickly not to do that. And the entire deposition did not go badly for Alex Jones. He actually looked pretty normal, pretty calm. And even the bit about the psychosis they took out of context, because in the context of what he was saying it, what he basically said is, you know, we've been fed so much misinformation by the mainstream media that even when you see something that's true, you have a reflex to think it's false. And you know, I've grown to appreciate that.
There's a name for that, I think, isn't
there? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's something trauma. Someone in the chat will definitely get it faster than me. But that's what he said. He's like, it was a form of psychosis. I looked at everything and I thought everything was fake, even that which was true, just because of the propensity of the media to push fake stuff on us. Then you discover it, and then you view everything as fake, even that which is true. And so, you know, after that deposition, that video took off. It's not just that I figured out the niche, and I call it a niche, but like the you know, the niche of the channel. I then also began experiencing firsthand in the early stages for me, the YouTube censorship, the absolute arbitrariness of the rules they implement, the slapping down of hate speech, because that deposition breakdown, my deposition breakdown of that deposition, where I'm sitting on my roof wearing sunglasses like a noob, that got removed from YouTube. And the reason they gave was
just for mentioning him, right?
Well, you know what? I didn't even, it's such an amazing thing. First, it got demonetized. Then it got, I'm forgetting the order. It got remonetized, then demonetized, back and forth on monetization, which I didn't care about. Then I go to the video one day. No, someone sends me a message and says, Viva, your video has been taken off the internet. And I go and I don't see the video anymore. All that's there is a little black box that says, violated the terms of service or community guidelines as relates to hate speech.
Oof. And then when was this? Do you remember what year this was?
This was 2019.
Oh gosh,
April 2019.
So right when they started really cracking down.
I don't even know what it was, but I said that's bullcrap. I take it down for whatever the reason, but now nobody sees the video. All they see is that label violates the terms for hate speech, and they're not going to know what I said. And so then I filed an appeal. I think the appeal got confirmed, and then 2 weeks later, out of the blue, the video is back up. It's remonetized, and it's been there ever since. But you know, it was all of this happened when it had gotten to about 250,000 views. So maybe if anybody wants to impute intentions, maybe it was to kill the momentum. Just
it was too hot, yeah,
and whatever. But that's when I started discovering the YouTube chicanery, which I then experienced more and more as time went on. But that is also, you know, a discussion on its own.
Very interesting. That's yeah. So you really stepped in it, but in a good way. Everything that happens to you is, I think, intended to lead you towards your purpose.
I know I tend to agree, and it's fortuitous. I mean, I did discover a lot of the I don't refer to people judgmentally in this sense. There are a lot of that's a polarizing issue. The entire Sandy Hook thing, Alex Jones as an individual, and the internet is a place where people speak freely, which often means they speak rudely, and you know, they bully people into, you know, trying to believe what they believe. I've seen both, you know, all sides of the Alex Jones as a human. The human part I'm much more comfortable with right now after our stream with him as well. But you know, the debate around some of these incidents, I don't get into those, because people will believe what they believe, and ultimately it doesn't matter what I believe. You know, it matters what can be proven, and it matters what is relevant or helpful for the discussion. So some issues I just stay away from, but Alex Jones, I'm not going to stay away from people just because, you know, YouTube might get me in trouble. Although I did think long and hard before doing the stream with Alex.
And Robert Barnes has represented him, and I think my curiosity and interest in him is the same as it is for many other people who are censored and deeply misunderstood and almost purposely misunderstood by the media. Was it through your, I guess, you know, reading about Alex Jones? Is that how you connected with Robert Barnes?
It was actually through Sandman, and the how wet behind the ears and totally ignorant I was. It took me so long to even piece together that Barnes was the lawyer in the deposition, where the lawyer at one point says, "I appreciate your work, Mr. Barnes." I never even put it together. I think we had done 1 or 2 streams before. It might have been the first stream I put it together, but it was actually Nicholas Sandman that brought us together on Twitter. Then I reached out and asked if he would do you know, explain things to us, and he agreed, because he was representing the Covington Catholic kids, not Nicholas Sandman. But it wasn't actually Alex Jones. I think that might have gotten me on his radar, or he might have seen that. But it was Nicholas Sandman and the Covington kids that actually brought us together. We did one stream. It worked. We clicked. And then we started doing more and more streams. And as the COVID took over and the elections, I mean, people just, he's an encyclopedia of information. He's charismatic. He's clear and concise in the way he explains things. I think I have a fair assessment of my own knowledge and my own skills, but I know where Barnes is just in another dimension. And I think what I bring to the table is I sometimes can clarify it, simplify it, break it down, and it's a learning thing for me as well to do these streams with Barnes. But it's turned into something, I mean, absolutely amazing. Never could have foreseen it happening, and among the most fortunate accidents to happen in my life. Yeah,
and you both have such great skills. Like, he is, like you said, an encyclopedia, but you kind of can break things down into in kind of like the way a teacher, the best kind of a teacher would, like into layman's terms, because I don't know what it is, and maybe this is on purpose, but I think just so many of us, either we don't read the laws or we just can't understand them. It is.
Well, they are incomprehensible. It is one of the biggest critiques of the practice, but it's not an accident. It is done that way so that lawyers can justify having a monopoly or just having a de facto monopoly, because the laws are incomprehensible. The procedure is incomprehensible. And it is such that even if, citizens, pro se litigants, have access to the system on their own, it's virtually impractical for anybody, because it's not a question of intelligence. It's just literally a question of reading code. And I can't code on a computer. I don't, I understand how people cannot read the civil code and piece together what any of the provisions mean. And it's breaking it down, simplifying it without distorting it is an important thing. It's very easy to pull a CNN and break it down so much that you totally distort what it means, to the point where you say, like, nobody can read these emails because it's against the law, so you have to watch us. So that is the catch. That's the most important thing, is break it down. Make sure you understand it enough, because I have to fill in my own blanks every now and again, and break it down enough to make it understandable, not too complicated and not oversimplified, so that it's useful to people who just want to understand.
And I appreciate, I'm going to pull up your channel here. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. I wonder if that's on your end there.
Well, I don't hear an echo on mine, but I can lower the volume.
Okay.
Okay.
I love this.
Oh yeah,
Viva on the Street. I really love these videos. Did they just start with you walking your? I mean, I'm going to play a little bit of one because I enjoy this.
All right, people. You thought the Viva on the Streets were going to end? They're never going to end. I will be doing Viva on the Streets. I don't know until what do you say? Your paws are disgusting. You just touched me in the face. This Viva on the Street, it's about the vaccine passports. which are now mandatory as of September 2nd.
So I'm going to mute this because I have you here live. These look like these were inspired. Yeah, just you're going on a walk with your dog and you're like, hey, this is a good time to talk.
No, when it happened is, I hope I remember my own life right. It was, I think, January of 2021 when our government, François Legault, of the Coalition Avenir de Québec, which is the Coalition for the Future of Quebec, but the acronym in French is CAQ, CAC, which is almost, it's CACA is what the government has become. But they said they're going to, a year after this flipping pandemic, almost, they say we have to go into curfew now in January. Winter in Quebec is depressing enough because it gets dark at 4:15 in the afternoon.
Oh.
So they say we're going to implement a curfew. It's going to be a 1-month curfew, like it was a 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve. And the only way you could get out of your house is if you had a dog, because our government is not stupid. They're not idiots. They're not nincompoops. They knew that if you have a dog surely should be able to get out of the house after 8 o'clock, even if humans can't. So they made an exception in the law for dogs, but only dogs, no cats.
Did a lot more people get dogs because of this reason? I mean, I know a lot of people did for the pandemic in general. But...
no joke and no question. A lot of people got dogs. I was looking for a rescue at the time we were looking for a rescue to replace a little bastard dog we had to give back to the breeder. We couldn't get one, and we fluked by getting Winston. But no, a lot of people got rescues, and then a lot of people are abandoning them now because now there's not a waiting list. Now there's a lineup of dogs to be rescued, whereas a year and a half ago there were none. But so the Viva on the Streets, it's like I'm gonna do a Viva on the Street because this is not gonna last a month. This stupid curfew, which our own government says there's no scientific basis to show that it's effective to fight a virus, but we're still gonna do it for a month just to flatten the curve so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare. In January, the same way we said 2 weeks in March, I said I'm going to do a Viva on the Street documenting this because it's not going to last a month. It didn't. It lasted 5 months.
Whew.
And after, I had done maybe, I'd say 18 of these. After they lifted the curfew, I was like, forget it. I'm still going to do these things. When I don't have enough time in the day to get a vlog out, I can still find 10 minutes to rant on the street like a lunatic, holding my dog, walking my dog, and walking down the street. And they become the great sort of, the jam-packed 10 minutes of the latest updates in Quebec or ranting on a particular subject. And that was on the vaccine passports, which start in Quebec apparently as of tomorrow.
Whoo. Wow. I've heard mixed reviews on, what people think of Canadians. Some people say, oh, they're too nice in general. I mean, I'm getting the Americanized gossip version. Oh, Canadians are too nice. They're pussies. They're not standing up for themselves. They're going to be like Australia soon. And then I hear your content and I go, all right, well, this is not the case. Like you're informed, you're passionate.
There's two sides to it. Americans say that about Canadians, and then Canadians up here, if you're following our election, you might have noticed that Justin Trudeau has been getting heckled on the streets wherever he goes. And the daytime radio, which is liberal to say the least, says, oh, the American politics have come up here. Now, this is not Canadian. We're polite. We don't tell politicians to go F themselves on the street. And I was like,
you can and should. Yes.
I don't view the world that way. Canadians historically have a different history, have a different origin than Americans. And I've truly grown to appreciate the impact that has had on First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and overall visions of freedom and what it means to be free and what risks one is prepared to accept to deal with the burden of freedom. But I don't think we're polite because we have crime, we have rudeness here, but we are docile as a population to the point where we seem to want more, at the very least in Quebec, of curfews. It takes a lot before the Canadians and the Quebecers start saying, yeah, okay, maybe now with a vaccine passport, that's going to require double vaccination and then potentially boosters every 6 months in order to have a valid passport in order to get into a gym. Maybe that's too much. And even still, we had 100 some odd thousand people in the streets protesting, but even still, a lot of people are very happy letting the government run every micro aspect of their life. But we are definitely more docile, more subservient, and more deferential to the government and to the courts than Americans are. And I do think it has something to do with origins, history, the creation of the American experiment. But I think I have a good lay of the land. I think people have had enough. A lot of people have had enough. And I think we're starting to see a lot of it now.
Yeah, I've been talking about this, and I think there's so many examples in the US too. Like, I've been angry for a long time, and I'm just like, what is it going to take? I feel like every person needs to reach their, I guess I've been calling it like their freedom rock bottom. Like, when are things going to get bad enough for people to realize, like, oh, we have to take action, we have to take to the streets, and I guess the vax passports has become that for a lot of people in both the US and Canada.
It's an interesting thing. Like, people have to hit their freedom rock bottom. But anybody who, if you've never seen the movie Owning Mahoney, the great gambling movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, but there is this idea that, the gambler, not the gambler's paradox, but sort of a gambler's loss, where you've lost so much, you're ashamed to admit and recognize what you've lost. And so you basically say, well, it went to a good cause anyhow. Like,
that's what people say when they vote for Biden. They're like, oh, well, at least it's not Trump. Like, that's
that's it. You say like, oh, and now they're going to say, well, it's so bad now, but it would have been worse. It's not the gambler's fallacy, but it's gambler's losses, where you've lost so much and you're never going to get it back, that you have to find a justification, a cosmic, benevolent justification for the loss with the money. Oh, it's going to a casino, it's going to help the reserve, it's going to help, it's going to go to charity. In Canada, we have casinos on reserves that help the reserves. We have government casinos, basically, oh, I just paid a little extra tax this year. And people rationalize their losses that way. Here, people have lost their freedoms. And I think, some are getting angry, some are starting to protest, and others recognize they're never getting them back. And so they have to rationalize the loss. And it's for the greater good. It's like, I paid a little extra in taxes this year, except I paid them with my civil rights and liberties. So what can you do? Bad day.
They're telling themselves it's in the name of safety. It's in the name of public health.
Greater good. I mean, I literally heard our radio hosts on a daytime radio today refer to it as, well, it's for the greater good, unquestioningly, as if the greater good is lockdowns, as if the greater good is vaccine passports, and not as if the greater good might be living with arguably extra certain risks, but with the undeniable benefit of individual freedoms, which itself is the greater good. I said that there is no greater good than individual freedoms, because that is what gave birth to this beautiful, nation that we have. And right now we're seeing what's happening in Australia. I don't know if it was ever free, but it's the death of any freedom in Australia and we're seeing it in real time. It's mind-blowing.
It's really crazy. And if it were about health, they'd be subsidizing gym memberships, vitamins, cleanses, right? They wouldn't be subsidizing, basically, I watched your video. The Canadian government is going to pay $1 billion to create an app to track basically like vaccination.
Who the hell even knows what it is? $1 billion for a COVID vaccine passport app fund. And like, the government talks about spending $1 billion like it's theirs. Like, they're going, I'm just going to go in my back pocket. They're going into my pocket and telling me how they're spending my money as though they've earned it. And how does an app cost $1 billion? I mean, it is government corruption through and through, and it's the greatest way to extort or coerce provincial cooperation. As it worked exactly that way with Ontario, Ontario, like Justin Trudeau himself, had been anti-passport before he became pro-passport. But you dangle $1 billion, and everyone's like, "Well, I'd like to get my share of that." But
I want a hot tub. Yeah,
right. I want to have a $300 million program in my province for an app that's going to cost much less, and then we'll hire administrators and people to advertise the app. It's laundering taxpayer dollars in a metaphoric, not criminal sense for the just
government fluffing. Yeah. And it's similar to the US, where it's like, oh, well, the government is not saying they're mandating, they're making the private companies enforce it. And then they're like, all right, well, we'll help you guys out. We'll pay for this app. And it's clearly you're seeing right through that.
No, and actually you mentioned it, and I had to mention no medical advice. I do not express medical opinions. Last year, a year and a half ago, I tweeted out, after all this isolation, after keeping people away from the germs that they would naturally be exposed to, I can only imagine how bad the next flu season is going to be. Lo and behold, who would have thunk that keeping developing kids in virtual bubbles, and that's how the CNN article referred to it, who would have thunk that it might actually cause bigger problems? And now we're apparently out of the States, we're seeing pediatric wards being filled, not with COVID-related illnesses in kids, but other virus, respiratory illnesses, rhinoviruses, because these kids have been disinfected, isolated, not getting exercise, not getting vitamin D, which we know the benefits of. The government is basically saying, do all of the wrong things, and who could have foreseen it coming except anybody with half a brain? You know, the old joke is that, you know, the difference between God and a lawyer is that God doesn't think he's a lawyer. Lawyers tend to think they know everything about everything, but there is a certain amount of critical analysis that goes into being a reasonable lawyer, where you can ask the right questions and just put 2 and 2 together. And a lot of other people are saying, yeah, this is going to be bad because you have to be exposed to a certain amount. It's one thing to protect against one virus in as much as it's even humanly possible, but collateral damage is a real thing. But when you're not counting it, you never have to factor it in. But we're seeing it now in real time. And
and I've always known that over sanitizing is a bad thing, but you know, fear makes people, I guess, forget their common sense. Right. It's like the vitamin D exposure, exercise, keeping yourself healthy is basically the biggest FU you can do to the government right now, because then they can't.
And everything that has been mandated, and I hated the word mandate as a lawyer, because as a lawyer, you say, oh, I'm working on a mandate. It's been a pretentious word for me since before this, but the government talking about mandate as if they've been mandated to do everything just because at one point they were democratically elected, assuming they were at one point they were democratically elected. Therefore, anything they do by way of edict is now justified under the guise of a mandate. It's, you know, a lot of dictators were democratically elected before starting to rule by government emergency fiat. But setting that aside, everything they have mandated people to do has been potentially, maybe it reduced COVID, maybe. But what is exacerbated in other respects that they're not counting conveniently, you know, basically falsifies any net benefits they might have otherwise purported to have. In Canada, you know, something like almost 80% of the deaths occurred in long-term healthcare facilities. And now we're seeing reports that almost something like 1 in 3 deaths in long-term healthcare facilities did not result from COVID, but from neglect and dehydration. And at one point, you know, some of these facilities were asked, well, who's dying of non-COVID? And they say, we don't know. We're not keeping track of that. So we only know the COVID deaths. We're only measuring things in COVID deaths. So 2 COVID deaths in kids under 20 in Quebec, whereas overdose deaths, suicides, psychological distress, not getting diagnosed for other illnesses, the long-term effects, we're not measuring that. So there's nothing to compare it to. But my goodness, we got our numbers down, even though it was never supposed to be COVID 0. It was just supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve, not to overwhelm the healthcare facility. It's
yeah, they don't want to give up their power, and it takes somebody who understands the law like you to be able to, because most people, like they're getting intimidated, they're getting bullied. You know, everything is, oh, it's an emergency order, this is a health order, this is a public emergency. It's easy to intimidate the masses with language and with coercion, when really it's like you just extended these emergency, right? We're going into 2 years now, emergency.
It's easy to intimidate them with fancy legalese and edicts and public health orders. It's also very easy to intimidate them with $1,600 fines that most people who have been now shut out of their jobs don't have the money to pay for. It's very easy to I don't want to say abuse the populace, but to abuse the populace and to browbeat them into submission and to unquestioning submission, to the point where they actually ultimately, some of them believe that it is for their own good. And if they were allowed to go outside and take their mask off, they would fall ill and die immediately. I mean, you've had the people's fear has become so disproportionately exaggerated to the actual risk. It's impossible to make people understand this. And for myself, I'm a fearful person in general. I'm a neurotic person in general. I have these reactions as well. And you just take a step back and you try to put things in perspective. But we live in a world now where we're talking about masking 5-year-old kids in kindergarten under the pretext that by masking children, for the ones who might have been pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic, you are having any meaningful impact on stopping the spread among a demographic which themselves have virtually zero risk of the virus. It's madness. It's just the world's gone totally mad, and the only question is who steps it back, because the politicians do not seem like they're in any mood to do that.
No, and it seems like Trudeau is using this bullying language with, I mean, you guys don't call them governors and mayors, you call them
prime ministers of the country,
okay,
prime minister and premiers of the provinces, and then you have mayors and towns.
It's too fancy, but
It's a
Trudeau's
parliamentary
using.
system. It's a very sophisticated system.
Oh, that's so fancy and French over there. Trudeau's saying, like, we really hope that so and so steps up, aka, bends the knee. And
I've been playing these sound bites. I've been playing these sound bites from Trudeau. They are truly frightening because it's like it is the purest definition of gaslighting. 6 months ago, verbatim out of the mouth of Trudeau, says, what about people with illnesses? What about people with allergies? What about people with with religious conditions? We're not a country that makes vaccines mandatory. And then literally 2 days ago, runs an ad saying, I believe in mandatory vaccines for planes and trains. I mean, it is literally gaslighting where you're like, did I not just hear him say the exact opposite 6 months ago? And now he's coming out at these stump speeches, frothing at the mouth, saying, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train and put the vaccinated at risk, as if there's any science to that. But it is genuinely scary because it's as though you call an election, you start scapegoating on what you know to be a minority of the population, because 70 some odd % of Canada has received both doses. And I believe it's over 80% have received one dose. It might be Quebec. I'm pretty sure
you guys are super vaxxed over there.
Super vaxxed, like vaxxed up the wazoo. I mean, I think that maybe only Israel is more vaxxed than us, although I'm not even sure Israel is. But we're dealing with a minority who are not vaxxed. And the reasons for that can be very legitimate, either medical or religious, or just legitimate questions of preference. But we're dealing with a minority. And so you get this guy coming out, calling an election, pitting the majority against the minority. And there's minorities within the minority, because our stats are roughly the same as yours in terms of actual ethnic minorities who are not getting vaccinated versus Caucasians. And it's just that you do wonder, or at the very least you get an insight into how things have gone horribly wrong in different generations in different countries, where once you have sufficiently demonized a minority and you have portrayed them as an existential threat to your existence, then you get people doing things that they think are justified to counter existential threats. And I want to make people realize it. It's dangerous rhetoric. It has no place anywhere, but certainly not in Canada and the US.
Yeah, it sounds like people are eager to get the gold stars ready. I don't know. Yeah,
no one likes that analogy, because you can't analogize things to other eras, because unless it's that era, you can't analogize it. Unless we live in China, can't analogize it.
Orange stars. All right. Well,
I mean, and I say no joke. Like as far as the analogies go, at one point they were actually giving yellow stars, not 6-pointed, 5-pointed stars, as a congratulations for getting vaccinated. Just the reverse. But the imagery was probably very poorly chosen. But it's like when you're talking about depriving people from transport or creating separate transport for them, I mean, Jesus, it doesn't have to be identical to be eerily analogous.
I would enjoy an unvaccinated train car, though, because it's like odds are like I can have good conversations with all those people. Like we're all kind of awake and red pilled, and like they're going to be smarter people. I read somewhere that like more people with PhDs tend to be unvaccinated. I don't know. I think it would be a party.
I don't disclose private information, but I know a lot of very intelligent, high intelligent. I know people on all ends who don't want to get vaccinated, but I do know a lot who you would think would not be the ones who don't want to get vaccinated, but have been in a position where they have not had to either disclose that or publicly. Things are going to change now, and we'll see who starts getting PO'd at the passport. But anyway, all this is the ugly talk of the world in which we live. But there's I guess there is still good out there. There's still some occasionally good comedy and music to listen to.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into some of these super chats before they scroll away and I lose them forever.
And they never come back.
I feel so bad because I sometimes am real bad at this, and then I miss them, and then people feel like I hate them, which is not true. 200 Watt Studio, Viva Faye. Oh, he wrote Faye. The second best Canadian. Hail Chrissie. Yeah, who is the first?
Justin It's got to be Justin Bieber. If it's not Justin Bieber, 200 Watt. I'm joking.
Or is it Trudeau? God. Ugh.
Oh dear God.
Gross. Barf. From Dave Bear, Sunset Thief is the most cutting nickname I've ever heard. Absolute daggers.
That was what I nicknamed François Legault. I also call him the Supreme Leader occasionally. But when he locked us in our houses. At one point, we were missing sunsets because the sun started rising actually before curfew started. And then the government was very nice. They extended the curfew to 9 o'clock.
Wow,
it's
how nice of them. Yeah.
benevolent dictators is what they are.
And then you have people in Australia celebrating their 1 hour that they're allowed outside.
No, I was like, oh, Australia is not China. You know, in China today, they just discussed how they're going to allow people to play video games. I think it's kids under 18, 3 hours a week.
That.
Yeah, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9. And like, all right, so that's a totalitarian regime because the government is micromanaging every aspect of your life. But what's going on in Australia is not even worse, where they only let you out of your house 1 hour to get exercise. I mean, there are prison inmates who have more rights than citizens, and how does anyone justify it? How does anyone justify it based on the actual risk, and the actual numbers in Australia make it even less justifiable? But this could never be justified. Lockdowns. That's not me, is it?
No, there's a lawnmower. There's a lawnmower outside.
Lockdowns. I want to bring back.
That's a lawnmower. It's not a vibrator. Everyone. Okay.
No, it was. Well, no comment. But
keeping it profesh. Okay.
We should never live in a world where any government thinks lockdown is a form of governance. It is a form of tyranny and should never be a form of democracy.
This is funny from Andrew Hoyle. Well, Australia used to be a prison colony, so they're just enjoying their 1 hour of yard time.
Yeah. It was colonized by criminals, and now it is run by criminals. That's what I said on Twitter one day.
It's like what a lot of us have been saying all along. Like, they're not going to want to give back or give up these powers. So just extend the emergency forever and ever. It'll just be a forever emergency. And
it's this, and I've had this discussion with people as well, you know, privately, but yeah, sure, there's a risk the government doesn't want to give up the power. And I've kept on, you know, reminders here. We've reached a new milestone. Have we gone too far yet? You know, when they told you couldn't have people in your house, have we gone too far yet? When they told you couldn't leave your house, have we gone too far yet? When they made vaccines highly recommended, when they make them mandatory, when have we gone too far? When they take away your kid because you are not a vaccinated parent, like just happened in Chicago, have we gone too far yet? Oh, wow. Yeah, there we went too far. The judge rescinded his order, at least that conclusion of the order. It's
yikes.
It is. I mean, some things, they're so preposterous when you read them. You say, this can't be true. I have to be missing something. And then you find out the truth is stranger than fiction. But for some people keeping up and paying attention and trying to sensitize those who are just too busy with, you know, everyday existence, which is itself very difficult. But for those, you know, people, even fewer people would know. And once you realize how much the internet and social media has allowed people to gain this knowledge that they would have otherwise never had access to, had the gatekeepers, the original gatekeepers, can, you know, maintain the gate, you understand why the government, especially in Canada, wants to start gatekeeping the internet the same way they gatekeep radio and television.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we all like to bitch about social media, like how it's turned a lot of the internet has turned our brains into mush. You know, people have got addicted to porn, etc. But yes, we've have been able to share information and, you know, develop truther communities, etc.
The internet is a source of misinformation. So be it. So was the National Enquirer. And the world has always had porn. It's
so is our mom. Yeah.
I look, without no personal anecdotes, but I do remember the original computer before the internet had a dirty game on it. I mean, porn and you know, these things have always been around. They always will. Misinformation has always been around, but the democratizing of information has not always been around. It was revolutionized with the printing press, and it was re-revolutionized with the internet. And that is very much why, imagine if we didn't have the internet, we would have known nothing that led to the outcome of the 2016 elections.
True.
Kids came home. If you hear that, that's a kid screaming.
Aww. They're not they're not kidnapped. They're my own kids.
I hear my wife telling them, well, maybe one of them will come down. Hey, why don't you come down and say what you're yelling about?
Oh yeah, get them on the pod. It's been interesting to listen to you and Robert discuss the differences between mandates and the different backlash that's been happening, you know, US versus Canada, how we've been dealing with it. What is your overall assessment that Canada is more governed and less likely to sort of, you know, are there less rallies going on? Are less folks, you know, gathering in the streets? Like, how are your, I mean, I was going to say, how are your friends reacting to it, which might be different than the population overall?
I won't disclose any private information about my friends. Some friends agree with me, some don't. There have been rallies, there have been protests, but by and large in Canada, having seen the lawsuits and the judgments, fewer things have made it up to the Supreme Court. So we haven't even had like the substantive determinations that you've had in the States. But the lower courts in Canada, there has not been one decision from a lower court that was like a Judge Stickman decision that actually said, no, enough is enough. In Quebec, one of the lower courts on an injunction, so the evidentiary burden is a little different, said, no, nothing wrong with a curfew because you haven't shown an irreparable harm by being locked in your house after 8 o'clock. One case made it to the federal court, which was the quarantine hotels. The federal court said, no, it's justifiable because there's a risk that someone can nonetheless test positive within 2 weeks, even if they had a negative test coming in. So the 3 days in a quarantine hotel at their expense for $2,000 is a justifiable limitation. What else was there? There were some court cases out of Alberta. Bottom line, no lower court has come to the defense of constitutional rights on behalf of the citizens. They've justified all of the measures based on the perceived risk. Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia's east. Then you go Quebec, Ontario. Then you get into the western provinces or the prairies, then British Columbia. But out east, on an injunction, a judge, by way of injunction, outlawed a protest, an anti-mask protest, on the basis that by gathering to protest what they were protesting, there was an increased risk of the spread of the virus. So the judge, by injunction, forbade, outlawed, restricted, prescribed protest. One of the most fundamental constitutional rights out there.
Couldn't you just say it's for Black Lives Matter? That seemed to work in this country.
The joke floats around, and it's no joke to it. I mean, I just posted this tweet earlier today in response to someone else who said that the lockdowns are fine because it's for public health. And I said, okay, well, if that's the measure, that's fine. But you can't literally, on June 8th, arrest Maxime Bernier, the leader of the PPC, for speaking to 30 people at most in an outdoor park in Manitoba or Alberta. And literally on June 11th, have a massive rally in Toronto with thousands of people, Justin Trudeau, Doug Ford speaking to commemorate that horrific act of a guy who ran into a Muslim family with his car. You cannot simultaneously allow public gatherings for some protests or for some events and then arrest political rallies and others. It's mutually incompatible. So it's either public health for all or public risk for all. And we saw it even more pronounced in the States. I mean, you had George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protests. Then you have Donald Trump doing an outdoor rally and it's a super spreader. Then you have Obama having a nice wedding.
Yep.
Crickets.
His party, right. His 60th birthday party.
The politicizing of everything ruins everything. It's not on this shirt. Politics ruins everything. It's on my shirt upstairs.
I wanted to bring up an interesting comment from the chat, and I was going to ask about this anyway. The difference between the FDA approval versus the continuing emergency use authorization, which means there's no liability at all. And I know there's a lot of people are confused thinking that the existing Pfizer vax got the FDA approval, but really it was approved for a future vaccine, and that the current one doesn't have FDA approval because it's not widely available. Could you clarify that a little bit?
I will not clarify because I don't want to make a mistake. But what I will do is I put it on a highlight yesterday from the stream with Robert from Sunday stream where we discussed it, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I get to plug locals. Locals. Robert, Viva Barnes Law. I don't have it under my username, but if anybody, that's where you get the information, because that's where we can discuss these things, or where these things are discussed in greater detail. I know that was the explanation that Robert gave in terms of the wording of the approval. As far as vaccine immunity goes, my understanding is that there's immunity for vaccines regardless. This was not anything specifically new, but I wouldn't want to make a mistake on that. So I would defer everyone to think about supporting vivabarneslaw.locals.com, or check out the highlight that I just put out, which we discussed the vaccine mandate lawsuits and the FDA approval.
Do you think that governments and employers that are mandating the vaccine, do you think they would at any point be held liable? Like if someone got it for their job? Is this another Robert question?
Well, it's another Robert question for the states. In Canada, it's going to be a dilemma because you have employment laws, and the employment laws require the employer to create a safe work environment. So this is a perfect double-edged sword. To create a safe work environment, some employers are saying, well, I've got to make sure everyone's vaccinated, otherwise I don't have a safe work environment. And if someone gets sick, it might be, it might be because it's an unsafe work, yada yada. Flip side is, if you compel someone to take a vaccine on the at the workplace, and they get sick, are you not responsible for that, for having created that environment that got them sick from the vaccine? We know the risks are minimal from the vaccine in terms of adverse effects, but there have been reported, and you can go look at the VAERS reporting systems, but there have been, and there's known risks with all vaccines of triggering relapses of certain immunological disorders, shingles for one. I know this now personally. It didn't happen to me, but it was a consideration for me to get vaccinated. So it's a double-edged sword, but you know that they're going to be playing it heavy on one side, because employers, especially when the federal government is saying you're not vaxxed, you're going to not be working for the federal government. You know damn well the private enterprise is going to go on that side, and they're going to have that precedent, that authority to rely on, and say, if it's good enough for the federal government, damn well better be good for us. And if someone who I compelled to take the vaccine gets ill for whatever the reason, we'll let the courts figure it out. I don't have an answer to it. I just know that employers are going to err on the side of a safe work environment means compelled vaccination, and they're already doing it. It's going to be a question of people filing suit and then seeing what the courts have to say. But you imagine the infinitesimal risk that we're actually talking about, that if someone does not get vaccinated, if they are pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, if they show up to work pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic and they get someone else sick, if that person's not,
and they can prove that it's from the coworker.
So these are the infinitesimal risks, that it's a sequence of infinitesimal risks. It's like flipping a coin heads 20 times in a row. The first time might be 50-50. Doing it 20 times in a row is not 50-50. So this whole string of ifs, can that justify requiring as a condition of employment to take a vaccine? I know what I think. And I know that, if you have a contract, there is an argument that to modify the terms of the contract is a breach of contract or constructive dismissal. I just know what the flip side argument is going to be: force majeure, beyond my control. I have to do it, and sue me if you don't like it. And that's what it's going to take. But then it's also going to take courts saying, yeah, we might be in a pandemic, but we might have an issue with COVID. Even still, even in times of urgency and crisis, certain lines cannot be crossed. Compelling someone to inject any medicines into their body against their will, but in the most extreme circumstances of the Jehovah's Witnesses denying it for their kid who just needs a blood transfusion. But for those extreme cases, this is not one of those that can possibly justify this course of action.
So do you think there'll be a lot of class action suits?
I know that I'm getting a lot of requests. I mean, not requests. I'm getting a lot of inquiries. I haven't been taking new files for years, and I can't. And I think it'll be a liability for me, given where I am in life now, to try to step into a court and say, now you have to take me seriously as a lawyer. I'm going to come in with too much baggage. But I know that people are asking. I know that people are looking for lawyers. The other issue is that these are political hot potatoes that some lawyers, just don't want to walk on. You don't want to walk into court as a vaccinated lawyer who's complying with all this to say the measures that I myself have submitted to, that this court are irrational and illogical and unjustified. But there have to be lawsuits. My concern is, in Canada, the courts are not going to come to the rescue. It has to be a political solution. In the States, I have much more optimism that the courts are going to come to the rescue of citizen rights. Your Constitution in the States is a God-given, it is God-given rights that were memorialized on paper. And in Canada, we have privileges that were decreed to us by the Queen that they thought nice to write on paper, but it's not worth much more than that, apparently. So I have more faith for the States than for Canada by way of court upholding rights. But man, we've all seen the way the world has just gone. Fear has taken over all rational decision, and it has usurped all fundamental rights for the greater good.
Yeah, pretty sure the whole thing is just still 99% survivable.
99 if you're in, like, among the higher risk. It's like 97 if you're
if you're an old fat mess. It's still
or but then the argument is going to be, underlying comorbidities. You don't always know if you have a heart condition, whatever. Okay, yes, but these are the anomalies. Maxime Bernier, the leader of the PPC, was on daytime radio today, CJAD, and they confront him. They say, Max, you're not vaxxed. Why? And he says, well, I'm a 56-year-old man. I'm pretty healthy. My chances of survival are 99.5%. I'll take my chances with the virus. And then after he's off the air, the announcers say like, oh, well, Maxime says he's 59. Well, 56. There have been 1,000 deaths of a 50 to 59-year-old in Canada. So good luck with that. And I was like, okay, there's been 1,000 some odd deaths of 50 to 59. There have been roughly 200,000 infected. So that math works out to exactly the justification. And when you want to scare people, throw out a number without context. When you want to inform people, give them the context. Yes, there have been 1,000 deaths of 50 to 59 from what I understand. That's of 200,000 people who have been infected. And that number goes down and down and down the younger you get. And then in order to justify these measures on kids, they have to go into other things like, oh, now there's long COVID. Now there's other issues that it causes. The flu kills more kids than COVID does yearly. It hospitalizes more. We might be seeing more hospitalizations as a result of this. And now we're seeing that there's going to be some confirmation that the increased hospitalization is as a result of what we have done, not as a result of what we were trying to protect against.
Absolutely. From Unlucky Meteor, on the subject of Australia, have either of you ever seen or talked with Daisy Cousins about that? She is amazing. You all would get along, I think. Haven't heard of her.
I haven't heard of her either. It's a tough thing. Like, the internet's an amazing thing because there are so many ecosystems of information and creators. And it's like when they start overlapping, you start discovering new people. I discovered you through Robert. I discovered Nerdrotic, discovered Razor Fist.
Oh, yeah.
It's a wonderful thing, but there are so many totally not sealed off, but just independent ecosystems that it's nice to see the crossover. And I'll look into it and I'll see I'll look into her after we're done here, but a lot of people out there.
Yeah, a lot of internet people to discover. David, do you want to talk a little bit more about your running for office?
Oh, yes. A lawyer never gets tired of talking about themselves. I'm joking. No, the run for office has been super cool, super eye-opening for me. The bureaucracy around elections in Canada is quite amazing, but it's been a wonderful experience. I discovered the People's Party of Canada just because there's no other party in Canada that is even talking about constitutional rights, opposing vaccine passports.
Are you guys like libertarians then?
Well, I don't know. Libertarian maybe with the lower L, but I don't qualify. Like I believe in fundamental rights. I believe certain lines can't be crossed even in emergencies, and I believe in basically minimizing the size of government. To the extent that it remains functional. The government is a necessary evil, but it should be the smallest of the necessary evils. But having seen the way things are going, the government has gone nuts, and nobody wants to rein it in, and nobody seems to be fighting for the rights of the citizens to rein in some of that government overreach. And the PPC was the only party doing it. It's called the People's Party of Canada, which some say is reminiscent of the People's Party of China or something. It's not a communist party. It's not a far-right party. It's just basically a party that says, take care of Canadians, take care of your own backyard before you start telling your neighbor what to do with theirs, or before you start, taking in everyone around you.
Almost like Canada first.
Well, it's such an ugly thing to say. It's a racist thing to say, as though Canada first does not include our Indigenous populations who don't have clean drinking water, who have a boil water advisory in something like 50 areas. They've had it for decades. They, as if Canada doesn't have minorities who have been suffering because of what's going on under COVID in general. And so the idea of Canada first is somehow racist. It's a non-starter. It's an unjustifiable thing to say. But the leader of a nation is supposed to take care of that nation. You collaborate with the international community. Certain things, certain things you cooperate with. It's normal. You want to maintain good relations. But at the end of the day, by concrete example, if you're a prime minister of a country and a pandemic is incoming to that country, you don't give away 16 tons of personal protective equipment to China, knowing that it's coming to Canada, and then leave long-term healthcare facilities high and dry where you exacerbate the deaths of the elderly in those. You don't do that. And I appreciate cooperation, but I also appreciate national autonomy. and
Common sense.
Yeah, it's so that's what the PPC is. But the run for office, forget about if nobody wants to, get lectured on politics. The run for office has been interesting because you get elected by the party. You got to start a website. You got to start fundraising because you do have to like buy ads and you have to, put up a website. You have to do all these things. Then you have to get certified by Elections Canada. So I had to go get 100 signatures from eligible voters in my riding to submit to Elections Canada. So they officially certify me as a candidate for the PPC so I can get on the ballot. Going door to door was an amazing experience because the PPC got heckled in 2018 and people still have a bad impression and a wrong impression of the party. So you have to deal with that. And when you're ringing people's doorbells, you're already intruding. You start talking politics, you're intruding tenfold more. Nobody likes politics. Nobody likes seeing anybody come to their door and try to convert them for religion or for politics.
But you have a likable face,
Yeah, I'm sincere. I mean, I know how people feel. I'm not coming there. If I get a bad vibe, I'm not going to push my purpose for being there. But it's a humbling thing to have to go and like literally have the door closed in your face or have people put the pen away because they don't like the party and therefore they don't like you. And the reasons for which they don't like the party are by and large totally inaccurate. But it's a great experience. We'll see if I ever have to do it again. But at some point, like I said in my channel, I have to run for the country before I think of running from the country. We'll see where this election goes. We'll see if there's a turning of the political tide or at the very least of the zeitgeist of Canada. Because if it continues this way, I don't want to say we're going to turn into Australia, but I'll make my decisions as to where I want to spend the rest of my life. And as much as I said, I don't want to remain in a toxic environment of commercial litigation for the next 10 years. I may not want to remain in an environment where my kids have to show vaccine passports to get into cafes. I find it shocking and offensive to my core.
And where can people learn more or help you or throw dollars at you?
The dollars, I'm never, I do not care for the dollars. Where they can find me are YouTube. They can share the channel. I mean, sharing is the best thing. If people do want to support, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, $5 a month, $50 a year. And it's amazing because we have an amazing community. I appreciate all of the support. It's amazing. But I appreciate all the support and never expect any monetary support. All of the content is out there on YouTube, Rumble for everyone to see. There are certain things that are exclusive to the supporters, but the information itself is going to stay out there, except for that which we have to unfortunately censor from YouTube because we can't discuss it. But YouTube, Viva Fry. Twitter is the sassy Viva Fry, but it's the Viva Fry. What else? Instagram is the useless Viva Fry. You can go to Instagram. It's nonsense. VivaPPC.ca is the campaign website. It's a bare bones website with some information. And if anyone wants to donate to the campaign, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com is if you want to support us and be a supporting member. You get a lot of amazing exclusive information there. I have Patreon and subscribe, but I don't care about that stuff. Viva Barnes, or you can watch it for free on YouTube and Rumble.
I love it. A couple more super chats. I'm just like trying to imagine what these extra perks are. I'm like, do they get Viva Fry nudes? Do they get,
No, okay. So the perks are Robert Barnes and I have a great relationship because I appreciate what he brings in terms of knowledge. I can't bring to the same extent. So I bring sort of the family side, the lighter side, funny pictures, funny dog stuff, funny embarrassing photos from childhood.
Dog stuff.
But I also bring the Canadian side, like I do not have the knowledge depth base that Robert has, but I do have still some stuff to offer. So, but the exclusive stuff typically is the hush hush episodes that Robert puts out, some personal stuff for me. Most of the stuff that I post is public, but in order to comment on the community, you have to be a paying supporter. But you'll get a lot of good information from vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
I love it. I love it. From David
Jumeau, which actually in French.
Oh, a Frenchie. Okay. Go, David,
means
go.
Twin. Jumeau is literally the word for twin in French.
Oh, wow. I'm learning a lot here. Go, David, go. Rah, rah, rah. Most competent person running for office. Thanks, David. Wow. Maybe I'm getting some French fans here. Dude, I remember when in 7th grade, they're like, do you want to learn Spanish or French? And everyone bullied me into taking Spanish. They're like, the Mexicans are coming. You got to learn Spanish. And I was like, French sounds so pretty.
French is pretty, but I would say Spanish is more useful, but I would venture to say, I've heard this said before in my own life, Mandarin is going to be probably Mandarin or Cantonese is going to be the most important language to learn.
Ugh.
There was one here. Oh yeah, here we go. Good podcast.
From Trendlaster, good podcast. Gonna see if you have one with Cerno. Oh yeah, I haven't had him on in a while.
I've had two with Cerno. Cerno was one of the first interviews where I seriously had to internally battle with what I understood cancel culture to be at the time. I was, in retrospect, irrationally fearful of having Cernovich on. I just
really,
the second I said Cernovich is going to be on, I started getting more hate mail than I usually got. People saying, "Oh, you know, all of the stuff about his past," and then I go look, and it's like, my God, this is how it works. People spread rumors.
I don't know anything about his past. I was like you. I didn't know anything about him. I just was like, oh, cool. He's a high profile, smart guy. I had him on. So.
Oh, no, I knew. Yeah. I said I was going to have him on. I knew he was controversial. I did not understand. I knew he was a troll. I mean, what he himself called himself, a Twitter troll. Other than that, I knew nothing. So I said, I'm going to have him on. Then I start getting messages like, go look at that interview where he talked about this and that. And so I spent the first hour of the interview with Mike, like going over this stuff from his past. And, you know, the decisions, bad things he might've said or things he might've said in the past that, you know, maybe he regrets. But I didn't appreciate, you know, this is what he's had. Once you say something bad, you have to live with this forever. And at some point he gets tired of apologizing. And he made that very clear to me in the interview. And it's only a year later when I rewatched that I truly understood everything that he was saying. I don't think I was unfair. I do think I was unduly nervous about having him on. I think I did spend too much time on things that he had addressed multiple times in the past, but it comforted me. I felt better after having done it, but I just learned how it works. They demonize these people. They make people fearful from interacting with them so they can say, look at these fringe extremists.
Oh, you platform this person who's problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's an amazing self-fulfilling prophecy, or more like a vicious circle. They say they're extreme right, stay away from them. Oh, look how extreme right they are. Nobody talks to them. And it's how the left wing sort of, I say mainstream media maintains their circle of I was going to say integrity, ironically, but it's how they maintain their circle. They don't have on.
Yeah, it's a clique. It's a cult. Yeah.
It's a clique. It's a cult that they think legitimizes their clique and their cult. Look how bad these people are. None of us have them on. There was nothing. First of all, Cernovich is an extremely smart guy and maybe said some things which are offensive in the past. Too bad. Everyone has, by and large. And if that's the criteria for unpersoning somebody, everyone that is out there has said something worse, at the very least in politics. But he's a smart guy, amazing insight, amazing hard work. You can hate him all you want. He's done better work than 95% of mainstream media, if not 99%, in exposing material things, meaningful things. And it's just the way they go. They want to delegitimize so they can control public discourse.
Isn't he responsible for
the Epstein documents?
Yes.
Epstein, and there was another one that he was asking for.
Was it Ghislaine?
Oh, jeez. I'm seeing. I'm going to forget it. But no, he's done amazing work, and he's relentless, and he's got a great memory, and he's got a great network, so that when people contradict themselves or lie in real time, he, and through his network of information, pulls up the tweets from 4 years ago where they said the exact opposite. He keeps people on it, and people hate that.
Yeah, he's great. He's a joy, as are you, David. Anything else you forgot to plug or promote? I think you said locals.
Oh, no, everyone can find me. If you put in Viva Fry into the search engine of either Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you use, put in Viva Fry, you'll see some fun stuff. The one thing I want to plug, it's the video that was my happiest moment on YouTube videos, when I caught a bass with a drone. If you put in Viva Bass, no, what am I saying? Drone bass fishing. It was, I've had 3 kids. It was top 5 moments of my life, which includes the childbirth of the 3 kids. Drone bass fishing. It'll blow your mind. I thought that video was going to break the internet, but it didn't. But it was one of the happiest moments of my life.
Wow.
I want to plug that.
Guys, everybody go. Let's blow that video up. Let's blow up this bass video. Really quick from Matthew Hammond. Should baseball come back to Montreal? What is something everyone eat once when visiting where you live? Okay, this sentence doesn't make sense.
Baseball should what is it? What is something that everyone should eat once when visiting? Baseball should come back to Montreal. We have the stadium. We have the Olympic Stadium. Speaking of corruption that we're still paying for, the Olympic Stadium. Google it, people. If anybody doesn't know the debacle of that stadium, Google it because it's mind blowing. A food that everyone has to eat when coming to Quebec. It is a no brainer. Poutine. It's gravy with cheese curds and fries, and it's the most delicious thing on earth. But it has to be cheese curds and not mozzarella. And if you come to Montreal, also real smoked meat sandwich. My preference is from Snowden Delicatessen, even though people like Schwartz's. I'm old school. And Montreal is, you know, all said and done, it's a great place. And we just have to make sure to keep it that way.
I love it. I love it. David, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And spreading your knowledge around and your wit. And you're just great. I'm a big fan. I'm going to have to get on Locals now just to check you out more.
And Chrissy, I want to say one thing. When I was doing my homework on you, we didn't get into it, but the most recent highlight where you were talking about in the culture wars, the allies versus friends. I forget who you were talking to. It was
Carrie Smith.
Perhaps the most insightful distinction that I've ever heard in what we refer to as the culture wars, the difference between an ally and a friend, and some people not viewing anyone as friends, but only as allies. And when you view people as allies, the second they defect, like apparently you have in your life course, it doesn't matter if you were friends, you become the instant enemy, because it is not a question of loyalty to friends. It's a question of loyalty to cause, which is what makes people allies versus friends. I love the distinction, and I had to mention it at least once.
I have to clip that. I remember that. And that was a big moment. So thank you for reminding me. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have to do this again sometime. You were great.
Anytime.
We'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, chat, for the super chat. Thanks for the comments. Thank you, guys. Bye.